In the world of pop music, some songs are just lightning in a bottle. They show up out of nowhere, dominate the airwaves, and become the soundtrack for a moment in time. They're so perfect, so inescapable, that they define an artist forever. In 1999, that song was She's So High. It made its creator, Tal Bachman, a global star overnight and seemed to announce the arrival of a massive new talent. The song was literally everywhere. But then just as quickly as he arrived, Tal seemed to just fade away. For most people, he became the poster child for the one-hit wonder label. But what if the story didn't end there? What if this one massive hit was just the first chapter in a story that almost no one saw coming? What if I told you the She's So High guy would end up sharing the stage with rock and roll royalty in a move that brought his entire career full circle? Because you guys asked for it, this is the story of Tal Bachman, a tale of a legendary musical family, one of the biggest hits of the 90s, and the long, strange road back to the rock and roll stage. Before we get started with today's video, if you guys want to support my channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And I've been told from a lot of my subscribers that they find themselves unsubscribed from my channel, or they don't see my new videos pop up, so make sure you turn on all notifications. Born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, music was just in his house. It was a family business. His father is the legendary Randy Bachman, the man who co-founded two of Canada's most iconic bands, the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive. Growing up, Tal was surrounded by it. He taught himself guitar by ear, he soaked up his dad's massive record collection, he even got a taste of the life, ditching high school for 3 weeks in 1986 at his dad's insistence and playing drums in Bachman Turner Overdrive when they opened up for Van Halen. It seemed totally inevitable that he'd follow the same path. Religion was also a big part of his early life. His father, Randy, became a Mormon in the late 60s, and it essentially drove a wedge between himself and his bandmates in the Guess Who. Bachman's newfound religious beliefs put him at odds with the band's typically rock and roll lifestyle, which involved drugs, alcohol, and other excesses that conflicted with his faith. Randy left the group in 1970, and Tal was also raised a devout Mormon, influenced by his dad's record collection and groups like ELO, British invasion bands. In addition to shoegaze groups, Tal had a deep love of music. But then in 1987, he just kind of hit a wall. No new bands or artists were speaking to him anymore. Couple this with the fact that he was really determined to make it his own way, and he temporarily walked away from music. It was a move that even blindsided his rock star dad. Tal told the National Post, "To rebel in my family was to wear a suit, go to university, and get a job. So that's what I did." His mother seemed more on board with the idea than his dad, pushing her son to become a newspaper columnist. So Tal soon enrolled in a small college in Utah and studied political science. His dad, Randy, would, believe it or not, call him up from time to time and ask him when he was going to quit school and join a rock band, something you likely wouldn't expect most parents to do. But while Tal was sitting in a class reading Plato's Republic, something clicked. An ancient philosopher's ideas about the power of music seemed to reignite a spark inside him. He remembered, as corny as it might sound, I was intrigued by what some of our ancient philosophers had to say on the subject of music. So I remember sitting in class reading Plato, who's talking about how great music was, and all of a sudden everything made sense. So I was like, this is great, I've learned a lot, but now I'm going to quit school and I'm going to start writing songs and try to get a record deal. He soon returned to Canada and moved to Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. It was now around 1995, and he went all in on becoming a songwriter. He cut his cable, he stopped reading, and devoted his full days to writing music. He split his time between his dad's studio and his home, where he listened to music to get inspiration. This went on for nearly 2 years. Tal's first set of demos saw rejection letters from Canada, the United States, and even record labels overseas. His dad, Randy, even handed out his demo tape to industry bigwigs, but no one seemed interested. His father, Randy, told the National Post, "I shopped it around to all the major labels, and they all said he was ahead of his time as a singer-songwriter. It was all grunge music at the time, and all they wanted to do was sign another Nirvana-sounding band to the label." In a funny twist of fate, one of Tal's biggest fans in his early days was none other than Jeff Lynne from ELO. Randy had given him a tape of his son's songs, and a few weeks later, Tal actually got a phone call from Jeff Lynne, who told him he loved his demo tape. It was a feeling of reassurance after so much rejection. So Tal continued to write, and he soon got the attention of EMI Publishing. But it was not because of the song you might be thinking of, She's So High. It was actually another song, and he hadn't even written She's So High yet. The other song was a ballad called If You Sleep. EMI really liked it, but Tal was still having discussions with the publisher and he wasn't signed yet. So to seal the deal, he wanted to write another attention-grabbing song. That second song he ended up coming up with to seal the deal was She's So High. It was a guy at EMI that Tal was dealing with named Evan Lamberg, who flew out from New York City to Los Angeles, and he stopped by Tal's rehearsal space. Lamberg walked into the space and heard Tal playing the chorus of She's So High. Tal remembered. Evan reached out and put his hand on the neck of the guitar and said in a heavy accent, "Tal, this is a smash." As for writing the song, he recalled how he got married young, had several little kids, and felt pressure to deliver and put food on the table, adding, "I needed to write a big hit. I love the Beatles, and I love the Beach Boys, and I love the Kinks. I love all their big radio hits." There was nothing non-cred about those songs. I wanted to see if I could write something that could be one of those big radio hits that everybody knows. So I spent the day wandering around trying to focus on this little germ of an idea I had. By the end of the day, I had She's So High. He added how he loved the falsetto leaps from groups like the Beatles, Beach Boys, and even Pavarotti, that he decided to do the same thing on the word high in the song's chorus. Now, another source of inspiration for She's So High was Sheryl Crow's tune If It Makes You Happy. Tal heard it one day while he was in a mall, and he thought it sounded so great on the mall's speaker system. He particularly liked the sound of the ride cymbal and the chord progression, and of course the chorus. He just needed inspiration now for the lyrics, and it was while studying some other songs, he recalled a memory from his high school days when he tried to convince a girl to date his stepbrother. He told MTV News, "I attempted to bribe the hottest girl in our high school to go out on a date with my stepbrother. So as the conversation between me and what I thought was this godly exalted woman progressed, I began to feel more and more uncomfortable and awkward, and so I just remember that feeling. I don't want to say fear, but just kind of being in awe of her." So Tal didn't have a title yet, but he wanted to have a title that was provocative if you just saw it and nothing else. So when you see the title She's So High, he wanted people to think, is it about drugs or something else? As for the historical references like Joan of Arc and Cleopatra, he pointed to the ELO song Can't Get It Out of My Head for inspiring that. It was over the next few weeks that EMI Publishing started pitching the Canadian musician's demo tape to different labels in the industry, some of whom had previously rejected him. Soon enough, Tal signed with Columbia Records. It was now late 1996, and perhaps part of the reason labels were now more interested in signing his music, other than having a big-name publisher behind him, is that the music scene had changed, and the industry was impressed by the success of female artists like Paula Cole and Sarah McLachlan, and they were now looking for a male equivalent, and they'd finally found that in Tal Bachman and Rufus Wainwright. At least that's how it was reported at the time. And now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, his connections. I will say there was an article that the LA Times published in March of 1997 with the headline The Offspring. It discussed the recent round of signings of children of famous musicians, including a musician Donovan, whose son had nabbed a recording deal around this time. You also had Elijah Blue Allman, the son of Cher and Greg Allman. You had Stephen Still's son Chris Stills, who signed to Atlantic at the time, and even Leonard Cohen's son Adam was also signed. All these musicians were being compared to Jacob Dylan's The Wallflowers and even Jeff Buckley, who were both enjoying success at this point in time. So as I mentioned before, these family connections frequently came up in interviews, and Tal claimed that he didn't get a record contract because of his dad. And I had mentioned earlier that his dad unsuccessfully tried to land him a recording contract. Tal also claimed that he knew many musicians with famous parents who couldn't get record deals as well. Now, the next part of the process was choosing a co-producer. Tal was going to be co-producing the album, and the musician admitted he spoke to around 24 prospective producers. Eventually, his demo tape landed on the desk of Bob Rock. Tal recalled, "So the next thing I know, my A&R man is going, 'Hey, Bob Rock got a tape. He really loves it.' And I went, 'Bob Rock? Like David Lee Roth, Metallica, me?'" Tal and Bob Rock ended up spending several months recording and mixing the album at Rock's home studio in Hawaii. In addition to co-producing, writing, and of course providing vocals on the songs, Tal also contributed guitar, lap steel, and piano throughout his self-titled album. His debut record was issued on April 13th, 1999. She's So High was supposed to be the setup track, the first single that would have some success on radio and MTV, get Tal's name out there, create some momentum, and it was going to be followed up by If You Sleep, the song that made Columbia sign him. Ironically, If You Sleep wasn't a huge hit. It didn't even chart in the States. But as we all know, She's So High was a massive hit, becoming one of the most played songs on radio in North America in 1999. The song shot to number 1 on the Billboard Adult Top 40 chart, number 14 on the Hot 100, and it was a top 10 hit all over the world. Bachman was also on The Tonight Show, he was in Rolling Stone magazine, he even appeared on Melrose Place, and opened for superstars like Bryan and the Barenaked Ladies. Tal Bachman had stepped out of his father's massive shadow and created a legacy of his own with a single perfect song. The single If You Sleep peaked at only number 61 in Canada, and the follow-up single, Strong Enough, only peaked at number 31 in Canada as well. Now, despite all the success of She's So High, his debut album only peaked at number 124 in the States, and surprisingly, it doesn't appear to have been certified gold. Now, the program director for the Canadian radio station CFOX claimed to the National Post that Tal's clean-cut image was just as attractive as the hard-drinking rock icons of the time, stating he will have to keep quiet about his family life if he wants to keep his female fans on edge. It was something, of course, he had no interest in given his religious upbringing. As Tal saw it, rock and roll began as a revolution, whether it was social, sexual, political, or economic, with him adding, in some ways those revolutions have revealed themselves to be fraudulent. The musician wanted his music to stimulate discussion about the real human experience, adding, music can be provocative and moving and profound and entertaining even if you don't worship Satan or snort mountains of cocaine. Songs like If You Sleep contain deeply spiritual tones, and even the liner notes for his self-titled debut record thank God as the first person. With his first brush with success, what did Tal now think of his dad's advice of quitting school to pursue music? Well, he told the Calgary Herald, "It's not that I think quitting school to join a rock band is generally good advice or anything. I think it's incredibly poor advice." After the whirlwind of She's So High, everyone wanted to see what Tal Bachman would do next. The pressure to follow up a big hit is just insane. The term one-hit wonder hangs over you, and the history of music is filled with cautionary tales of artists who burned bright and then just fizzled out. It was a time of massive change in the record industry too. You had mergers, corporate reshuffling, downsizing, and online piracy taking a bite out of industry profits, all while the musical landscape was also changing. It was a few years after She's So High was massive that Columbia Records just seemed to lose interest in Tal Bachman and many other artists on the roster. In 2004, he revealed, as an artist, it's hard to keep writing and demoing songs and sending them into people who give them a curiosity listen or don't care. Now, despite having no interest from his label, he spent nearly 2 years trying to get out of his recording contract, but by the mid-2000s, his management had also dumped him, his music publisher left him as well, and all Bachman had left was his family, his faith, and a makeshift barn studio he built. But it was around Christmas of 2003 he began to feel disillusioned with the Mormon church and its teachings, and his dad was also feeling the same thing. Tal sat down with his wife, who he called an ultra-right-wing flame-throwing Orthodox Mormon, much like himself in the years prior. Something that Tal took 12 years to realize, only took his wife 3 days to realize, and while his wife suggested they join a different church, Tal didn't want to. All while this was going on, he was quietly working on his second album titled Staring Down the Sun in that barn of his. But slowly over time, things started to look brighter. He got a new manager in Steve Warden, who suggested they release his second record electronically through something called the Music Crypt system. The first single, Aeroplane, was released to radio stations electronically, and it actually charted in the top 20 in Canada, leading to a deal with Canadian label Sextant Records. The second single, Broken, was issued, but it essentially went nowhere. Tal's second album kind of just came and went, and it never came close to matching the success of his debut record. So why did it not connect? Well, part of it was the classic story of an artist caught in the industry machine. Without a giant company like Columbia pushing it, the album was dead in the water internationally. That 5-year gap also killed Tal's momentum. In pop music, 5 years is an eternity, and it didn't even get a US release until 2 years later on Artemis Records. It was following the quiet reception of his second album, Tal pretty much vanished from the public eye. He didn't stop making music, music, but he dedicated more time to his family and other interests like rugby and political commentary. He also appeared in documentaries discussing religion, including a PBS 2006 series titled The Mormons, and believe it or not, he even appeared in comedian Bill Maher's documentary Religulous. In 2005, Bachman was invited to be a special musical ambassador for Canada in South Africa and Zimbabwe. For all intents and purposes, Tal Bachman, the pop rock star, was gone. Many assumed his musical journey had reached its quiet conclusion, but they were wrong. The most surprising chapter was yet to come. For years, the story of Tal Bachman was one of quiet family life and occasional local gigs. 2011, he was in the news again when Taylor Swift was playing Vancouver, and she brought out Tal on stage to perform She's So High with her. Swift told the crowd that night that that song had inspired her to take up music.
A song that absolutely made me want to be in music. It was so good.
And then in 2023, the story took a turn that nobody saw coming. The catalyst was his father's band, Bachman Turner Overdrive. In 2023, after the tragic deaths of original members Robbie and Tim Bachman, Randy Bachman decided to revive BTO for a 50th anniversary tour. But he needed a new lineup to pull it off, and he decided to keep it in the family. Randy officially recruited his son Tal to join the new BTO as a guitarist and vocalist, and suddenly the She's So High guy was a member of the band famous for blue-collar anthems like Taking Care of Business. And it gets even better. Tal's wife Coco Bachman joined on drums. As Randy put it, BTO became a family band once again. The new BTO went into the studio to record the band's first new material in decades, 2025 single 60 Years Ago, a tribute to the Winnipeg music scene where Randy and his generation got their start. And in a move that stunned the rock world, the song featured a guitar solo from another Winnipeg legend, Neil Young. Let that sink in. Tal Bachman, the 90s pop icon, is now on a record with Neil Young. In 2025, the band launched the Back in Overdrive tour, playing to huge crowds across North America. The set lists are a celebration of the entire Bachman legacy, featuring BTO classics, the Guess Who hits, and in a perfect blending of Royal Tal's own massive hit, She's So High.
Please. And right now we're going to go back to the summer of 1999. Some of you know what that means. That was that year that I wrote, recorded, and released on Columbia Records this next song, a power pop song. And we're going to try it tonight, so if you know it, sing along. She's so high above me.
Today, Tal Bachman is living a pretty unique life. He has a quiet home on Vancouver Island with his family, but he also spends his nights on a tour bus playing classic rock anthems as a member of his father's legendary band. The story of Tal Bachman is so much more than a one-hit wonder tag. He's a musician who hit the absolute peak of pop stardom and navigated all the pressure that comes with it. He saw the industry from the inside, felt its embrace, and then experienced the quiet that comes after the spotlight moves on. By joining Bachman Turner Overdrive, he didn't just find a new gig, he found a new way to be a musician, blending his own identity with his family's. Far from being a forgotten artist, Tal Bachman is still out there, proving that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead you right back to where you belong. He's not just a one-hit wonder, he's part of a legacy, still taking care of business. He has a really good view of being labeled as a one-hit wonder, remarking, everyone wants more than one hit, of course, but then if you have 5 big hits, everyone wants 6, and so on. Honestly, it's no different if you have 1 or 10. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Rock Roll True Story sticker.